The trial of Laurie Shaver is set to begin September 9th, this upcoming Monday, and it's a trial that you're really not going to want to miss. It has all the hallmarks of what makes a very interesting homicide trial. And today we're going to be jumping into a lot of the facts and the evidence that we're going to see in that trial as laid out in the probable cause affidavit. So it's a pretty lengthy probable cause affidavit. I read through it. We're going to summarize it. We're going to talk about some of the evidence that we're going to most likely hear about. And we're also going to be talking about some of the arguments, as well as hear from the defense attorney who actually gave an interview in this case and kind of gave us a little bit of a glimpse into what some of the defenses are going to be in this case. Definitely a very, very interesting trial. Before we jump into the actual facts and the evidence as laid out in the probable cause affidavit, I do want to make one quick announcement, and that is that next week, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to be just too busy to be able to put out a video for you guys. So I'm apologizing in advance that next week, most likely, you're not going to be getting a video from Brother Counsel. But the good news is that I hope to, and I plan on live streaming Donna Adelson's trial, beginning to end. So I really am planning on that. I'm hoping it all works out. And that's the plan as it sits right now. So we're going to be live streaming that trial and giving you my live commentary, my real-time analysis as everything is unfolding in court. And in case you can't catch that, of course, we also do plan on doing our daily recap videos and our daily analysis of what's going on during this trial as well. So in case you missed the live stream, we still also will be putting out a video recapping what happened in that day of trial. So that's some good news, some bad news. And without any further ado, let's move on to what is going on in the Laurie Shaver case. So this is what we know from the probable cause affidavit. This murder allegedly occurred sometime between November 7th and 10th of 2015. Laurie Shaver was married to Michael Shaver. Michael Shaver was murdered sometime between November 7th and November 10th of 2015. Now, this is 9 years later. This is 2024. What took so long to actually charge her, complete the investigation, and bring her to trial? Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that Laurie Shaver was impersonating Michael Shaver and using his cell phone and using his Facebook and pretending to be him and texting people and sending them Facebook messages. And that's what the evidence is going to show. And what eventually happened is that in February of 2018, so this is almost 3 years later, about 2.5 years later, after he allegedly was murdered, finally his friend, Scott, and I'm going to probably butcher his last name, but it sounds like Amatuccio. So his friend Scott decides I haven't seen him in too long. Let's call the police. He calls the police to perform a well-being check. And again, since Scott and all of his friends and all of his acquaintances has not actually physically seen him. Now, they've gotten some messages from him through text messages and through Facebook messages, but they haven't actually seen him. So they're starting to get concerned what exactly is really going on here. On top of that, his Florida driver's license, his passport, and his FAA pilot medical certificate all expired, and they were not renewed. That's another indication that something's going on here. Well, police arrived at Laurie's home, and Laurie's still living there, and they live in Florida, and police come to the house, and they ask Laurie, "Hey, where's your husband, Michael?" And Laurie tells them that Michael actually moved to Georgia because they got into some sort of fight about some other girl that she caught him with or something like that, and therefore he moved out, and he's living now in Georgia. Well, even though that was the story, seems like most of his possessions and property was still in Florida. And initially, Laurie cooperated with the police and allowed them in her house. Sure, you can come in, search the house, be my guest. And they're searching the house. And then when it comes to a specific area in the backyard, all of a sudden Laurie says, "You know what? You searched enough. You're welcome to leave now. Don't come back, probably without a warrant." And that was when the police wanted to search a fire pit. Right by a fire pit, there was a concrete slab, and they asked if they can search that area, bring a cadaver dog to sniff it around. And she said, "You know what? You guys searched enough. You can go now." Well, at that point, a missing person investigation was open. So even though, again, allegedly the murder happened November 2015, and the police first got involved February 2018, through almost 2.5 years later, they now open up a missing person investigation. Now, on March 9th, 2018, the police get a search warrant to search that area of the fire pit, and what they found was horrific. They dug up, and they found Michael's skeletal remains 3 feet underneath the ground, and he was wearing clothes. He was wearing socks. He was wearing underwear, and they also found a tarp, and they found ratchet straps, and a fitted sheet. They also used Blue Star, which is a chemical which can detect blood. It can also detect other things, and that's why they always call it always call it presumed blood, but it's not 100%. I'm sure we'll hear about that from the defense attorney. So the police used this chemical called Blue Star, and they were able to determine that there were drops of presumed blood leading from the home to that fire pit. So that's when the police opened up a homicide investigation. Right. So what happened was there was an autopsy that was performed, and the autopsy determined that Michael died from a gunshot wound to the back of his head, and it was from a .38 caliber bullet, the same exact gun that Laurie owns. Laurie owns a gun that shoots a .38 caliber bullet. The time of death was obviously very difficult to determine, which is why we're kind of stuck with this November 3rd, November 7th. The autopsy report says maybe it was a few months, maybe it's a few years. It's basically impossible for the medical examiners to determine a time of death because it's been so long that Michael was buried under that slab of concrete by the fire pit. Now, as soon as January 2016, so let's get the dates kind of set in our mind. We have November 2015 is when the murder was allegedly committed. 2018, March in 2018 was when the police discovered Michael's body and the autopsy was performed. But let's go back to November 2015. November 2015, the following January 2016, Laurie began a relationship with Travis Fillmore. And that relationship lasted only a couple of months. But during that relationship, Laurie told Travis that Michael is not simply missing. Rather, he is no longer walking this earth. Those were her words. And then she continued to confess to him, and I'm calling it confess, but she continued to tell him that something bad happened to him, to Michael, and that there was a body on her property or buried in her property. So this is what Laurie already told Travis Fillmore in January 2016. Now, the last time anybody saw or heard directly from Michael Shaver was November 7th, 2015. That's when he was last seen, and that's when his cell phone, recorded an outgoing call. So he made a phone call November 7th, 2015. That was when he was last seen in public. Well, what happened that day? Well, what happened that day was that Laurie and Michael went out to a tractor show, and they went to a tractor show with Michael's friend, Frank Merritt. And Frank Merritt is not just a friend, but they're also co-workers. So they went out to this tractor show together, and Frank Merritt is going to tell us that it was very obvious that there was some real problems between Laurie and Michael. They were very obviously not getting along, and because of that, they left the show early. That was when he was last seen. But even though that was the last time he was last seen, for somehow his phone and his Facebook were sending messages purported to be from Michael. In fact, Mr. Merritt, Frank Merritt, the person who was last seen with, texted Michael the next day, and he got no response. So this is now November 8th. So November 8th, Frank texts Michael, hey, what's going on? Where are you? You know, they were coworkers, missed work today or something, and there was no response. On November 9th, he texted Michael again, hey, buddy, where are you? You know, you coming to work or not? What's going on with you? And he received a very strange response from Michael's phone. And the response was in a text message, which said that he is quitting work in order to save his marriage. Now, John Borglum is Michael's boss, or was Michael's boss. And John says, John's going to testify, most likely. This is what's laid out in his probable cause affidavit, so we can assume that this is what John is going to testify to, that Michael would never just not show up to work and send him a text message. He would always call in and say that he's going to miss work. And this is a time that he didn't do that. John also texted Michael. He texted him November 12th. So again, we had the last time he was seen November 7th. We have Frank Merritt who's texting him November 8th, November 9th. Then he gets that weird response that he's quitting work. And then John texts Michael on November 12th. And this is the response that John, his boss, Michael's boss, received from Michael's phone. I'm having issues at home in Georgia right now. Just fire me or I'll quit. I will not be returning anytime soon. That was the text message from Michael's phone to John. Now, Frank Merritt was getting nervous. He was his coworker. He's his friend. And Michael's just not showing up. So Frank actually comes to Michael's house where Laurie and Michael live. And that's when Laurie told Frank that Michael actually left to Georgia. And when pressed further about this, because his car was there, how did he get to Georgia? So Laurie said that, well, he left with another friend named Robert Mercado. Well, wouldn't you know it, that when Robert Mercado was asked about this expedition, he denies ever going with Michael to Georgia. All right, now, November 16th, 2015. So a few days later, which is a weekend, Laurie sends a message to her friend, Alicia Ray, and she's talking about how her weekend was. And this is what she says about her weekend. That she was doing tons of yard work and that she had to clean up. She was cleaning up the outside. That's what she spent her weekend doing. Now, the people who did receive these text messages and Facebook messages are going to testify that these messages were very not like Michael to send. They just were not his type. They weren't with his wording. This just didn't seem like the Michael that they know from the text messages and from the Facebook messages that were sent purportedly by Michael. Now, here's some more interesting information. After November 9th, so again, in the same November 2015 area, after the time Michael was last seen, Michael's debit card purchases some lingerie from Wish.com, and it's shipped to none other than Laurie Shaver. On November 30th, a check was made from Mariner Finance Company, to Michael Shaver with a loan. Somehow there's some sort of loan that Michael Shaver took out. And on November 30th, this check was sent to their home where Laurie lives. It was endorsed on December 11th. So now another month later, since the last time that Michael was seen. And it was endorsed by an unreadable signature. You couldn't really read the signature. It's just a few scribbles. It was deposited into Michael's account through an ATM. And then withdrawals were made from ATMs for that money. And online purchases were made from that account, including an online purchase from Walmart, which was shipped to Laurie Shaver. And as you can imagine, that loan that was taken out in Michael Shaver's name was never repaid. No payments were made on that loan. And obviously the loan company is not just going to sit there. They could never locate Michael to serve him with some sort of lawsuit or some sort of collections letters, anything like that. They were not able to get in touch with Michael. Now, another interesting pattern is that prior to November 9th, before Michael disappeared and before this debit card started doing these online purchases, Michael's pattern was that he would only use his debit card for in-store purchases by himself when he's there in the store. He never ordered things online with that debit card. So again, something showing that something is off here. Now, December 2015, about a month later, Laurie starts to try to sell a bunch of Michael's possessions, a bunch of his property. She just tries selling it, selling his tools, selling his guns, trying to sell his car without the title. She tried to sell that. She even tried to sell the property that she was living in, I guess, for $150,000. So she's trying to sell all this stuff in December 2015. All right. Now, she has this relationship with Travis Fillmore. So Travis Fillmore, she tells Travis Fillmore in the beginning of 2016, what does she tell him about her relationship with Michael? They were married, after all. Well, she tells him that they got divorced. However, there is no record or any sort of filing for divorce. And there was no child custody payments that Laurie tried to get from Michael. Now, also, another interesting part here is that Laurie never called Michael's phone after November 3rd, 2015. So the last time that Laurie actually called Michael was before the last time he was seen, November 3rd, 2015. And going back on her records, on her phone records, you can see that she used to call him all the time, as you would expect for a married couple to do. But for some reason, after November 3rd, 2015, she never called him. Now, 3 days after, this is a very interesting part also. 3 days after Michael's body was found, a postcard purporting to be from Michael was sent from Orlando to Laurie with a handwritten message. Now, this is, I think, an interesting part. They don't talk about this in the probable cause affidavit, but this is something perhaps we're going to see during trial, is that the comparison of this handwriting with Michael's regular and normal handwriting. So here we have a postcard that is sent from Michael, living in Orlando, came from Orlando, with a handwritten message. And the handwritten message said the following: "Tell the kids I love them. See you soon, Mike." And this postcard was 3 days after Michael's body was found. So after that time that the police dug up his body, 3 days later, they get this postcard, which is purportedly from Michael. So either he's writing posthumously or there's an issue there. All right. Then we have Michael's Facebook page. And Michael's Facebook page was consistently being updated, which would suggest that he's alive. So it's being updated. However, it was also using the same IP address as Laurie's Facebook page. So the same IP address that's updating Laurie's is also updating Michael. All right. Now we're going to get into some other stuff. We know that Laurie, as we mentioned before, was dating Travis Fillmore. But there was another man that she was also dating. And that was a man named Jeremy Townsend. So it seems that Laurie was cheating on Michael in beginning September 2015 through around April 2016. And this is laid out in the probable cause affidavit. So the only question that I have is that it seems to overlap with Travis. So was she dating both of them at the same time? Is there some sort of mix up with the dates? I'm not 100% sure, but the probable cause affidavit says that she was seeing Jeremy Townsend from September 2015 through April 2016. And one time, Jeremy's going to say that he came over to Laurie's house, and he saw blood on her jeans. And he mentioned something to her, "Hey, what's that blood on your jeans from?" And she blew him off, changed the jeans, and never put those jeans on ever again. And these were jeans that she actually used to wear all the time. So no mention of it. Don't ask me. We're not going to talk about it. Change the jeans. Out of sight, out of mind. Now, here it gets a little bit even more interesting. Jeremy was actually married. Jeremy Townsend, I believe, is still married. And he was married to Vanessa. So Jeremy was really technically cheating on his wife, as well as Laurie was cheating on Michael. And Laurie decided, and again, this is all laid out in the probable cause affidavit. So Laurie decided that she is going to pretend to be Michael, okay? Pretend to be Michael and contact Vanessa as Michael, alerting Vanessa to the fact that their spouses are cheating on them. And she first sent Jeremy's wife a Facebook message, and apparently she didn't get it, Vanessa. And then what she did was she sent flowers to Vanessa, signed by Mike, letting her know, I'm not going to say exactly what the language of that note was, but letting Vanessa know that that Jeremy is cheating on Vanessa and And Laurie is cheating on Mike. And this is really Laurie, but it's Laurie pretending to be Mike, telling Vanessa our spouses are cheating on each other, with ourselves. They're cheating on us. So eventually, Vanessa actually confronts Jeremy about it. And Vanessa and Jeremy actually decide that Laurie is nothing interesting. And yeah, you're right. He made a mistake, but there was no real connection there. He was just doing it for thrills. And therefore, they're going to stay together. So Jeremy and Vanessa actually decide that they're going to stay together. So in April 2016, Jeremy breaks off the affair with Laurie and stays together with Vanessa. And it seems that Vanessa and Jeremy are actually going to be cooperating with the prosecution in this case. So exactly what was going on with Laurie and Jeremy, and it seems that Laurie was very, very into Jeremy. She actually got some tattoos in certain very interesting places, very special places to her, and which told Jeremy that Laurie was taking this affair much more seriously than he was. For him, it was just fun and games, and it really wasn't any serious connection there or serious emotional connection, and he really just was doing it for fun. And she seemed to have been much more into the relationship, and that's why she got these tattoos. So then we have another interesting text message exchange, and that is from a friend of Michael's named Mary Lundberg. I believe that's her name. Mary Lundberg is texting with Michael, and these text messages are somewhere around 2014, 2015 time. She doesn't know exactly when it was because it was an old phone, so she couldn't really nail down exactly the date when these text messages were sent, but obviously they were sent before anything happened in November 2015. And the text messages say the following. This is Michael. Michael says the following to Mary. She wants my life insurance, referring to Laurie. And Mary responds to Michael, she's got to kill you first. And Michael responds to her, she tried yesterday, I'm sure. So Michael seems to be understanding himself that Laurie may want to knock him out. And he's under the impression that she tried to kill him once. And then he also told her, this is what he tells Mary, his friend, that sometimes Laurie takes over his phone and his Facebook account and starts sending messages as though it's Michael when really it's Laurie. So already telling Mary about the conduct that we see Laurie engaging in after Michael's dead. Now, there's also going to be some evidence we're going to hear from that sometimes Michael would walk into work all beaten up, abused, and there were some domestic violence issues between the both of them. Seems at some point he was charged, some point she was charged. And there was also another interesting time where they were briefly separated. So Michael and Laurie decided we're going to separate for a little bit. So they separated between November 2014 and May 2015. And at that point, Laurie was actually dating somebody else. But Laurie told Michael that we're separating. I can see other men, but you cannot see other women. And in fact, he actually did see another woman, Kendall. And Laurie was so upset about that she would make Kendall's life miserable. And she made her life so miserable that she eventually broke up with Michael. Now, I guess at some point after May 2015, Michael and Laurie got back together. But again, we're seeing the type of personality of Laurie that she's allowed to date other men, but he's not allowed to date other women. Okay. So that really essentially are the main points of what we find in this probable cause affidavit. A lot of activity, a lot of facts and evidence that certainly seem to be pointing that Laurie did something here, is trying to cover it up, and all of these purchases and these text messages and pretending that he's really alive when he's really not alive. All right, so a lot of very interesting activity and actions that were taken by Laurie. So what exactly are the defense is going to be in this case? How can you possibly defend this? That Michael was found in her backyard. She's the only one living there. Who else did this? Well, let's hear from the defense attorney himself and see what he's going to say the defenses are. So get ready for this. It is very interesting.
At the time of this death, Laurie was dating another individual. This individual was present within the residence at the demise of Michael Shaver, that he had entered the residence and Laurie had been beaten up, was on the floor. The minor child had been involved at that stage to some extent. And we don't know precisely, if that minor child had actually provided the fatal shot to Michael at that stage. But this other individual that she was dating had taken the gun and fired a shot into Michael.
So we're seeing that he's actually going to argue two things. Number one, that Laurie Shaver's daughter, her 7-year-old daughter, actually was the one who pulled the trigger, at least one shot. And then Laurie's boyfriend at the time, and it's unclear if this was Jeremy Townsend or if it was the other boyfriend. Who was the other boyfriend? Forgot at this point. So it was one of the boyfriends who actually also shot Michael, and it wasn't Laurie at all. And in fact, we've also heard from there was a motion hearing. We also got to hear from in that motion hearing that there's going to be evidence that Michael was actually the one who was very abusive to Laurie, and she was always getting beaten up. And apparently the daughter, Laurie's daughter, is going to take the stand and is going to tell us, I guess, about some of this abuse. And she's going to say her version of the story where maybe she actually took the gun and shot Michael. And then this is all just one big cover up that Laurie is trying to cover up what her daughter and her boyfriend did. So it seems that all of this funny actions and all of this facts and evidence of what she's trying to cover up was really just her, I guess, trying to save her daughter, because her daughter really was the one who shot Michael, or perhaps her boyfriend, whether it's Travis Filmer, whether it was Travis or whether it was Jeremy. One of them seems to be the one who also shot Michael. So that's what the defenses are going to be. An interesting case. So I told you this is going to be a very interesting trial to follow. I would love nothing more than to follow the trial, but next week's going to be a little bit busy, so we'll see if we can actually squeeze in to watch some of the trial a little bit. And if it's still going on the following week, perhaps I will be able to give you some analysis on that. But that's going to be it for now. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time. Next time's probably not going to be next week, probably in another 2 weeks, but you're going to be in my hearts and my minds, and I'm going to be trying to get to you as soon as I possibly can. Well, that's it for now. Thank you all, and we will see you next time.